I'm really thrilled to be here. I'm a little surprised to be here because I never thought of myself as a social entrepreneur. And I never thought of Women Make Movies as a social enterprise. In fact, I had to look it up in the dictionary before coming here, since I was asked to speak in a section called What is Social Entrepreneurship? Of course, I've been aware of the social entrepreneur movement, and in fact, our former marketing manager went on to be the Skoll Scholar at the Said School of Business at Oxford. But I've been doing this for so long, so incredibly long, that it's before the words were actually in common usage. And it was great to hear the little history going back to 1980, to know that I actually wasn't so out of step with what was going on. I just didn't know that it would all come to this so many years later. So I want to tell you a little bit about my two passions and what brought me to the place where I am now, which is running this nonprofit organization, Women Make Movies, for the last 30 years. But first of all, I will tell you, I did look up the definition of social entrepreneurship in Wikipedia, if you call that a definition. And it said that a social entrepreneur recognizes a social problem and uses entrepreneurial principles to organize, create, and manage a venture to achieve social change. And the definition of a social enterprise seemed even more fitting to me and Women Make Movies. It's an organization that applies capitalistic strategies to achieving philanthropic goals. And I remember many years ago, I was on the board of an organization called the National Alliance of Media, Arts, and Culture, and I was accused in a very derogatory way by my fellow board members of being a capitalist Republican because I was encouraging the other organizations to adopt earned income strategies to their way of financing their organizations as opposed to subsidizing their programs through grants. And that's really at the heart of Women Make Movies as a social enterprise, which I'll tell you about. But first, it starts with feminism, and it starts also when I was very young as the first speaker, but that, of course, is many, many, many more years ago. In fact, it was in the 1960s when I was a little girl, and I was watching films with my mother, who had a bad problem with insomnia and would watch all these late-night movies. And I grew up watching films, film noir films from the 40s with these amazing women characters, these beautiful actresses that had hair that kind of always went like that, and they drank scotch and smoked cigarettes, and in particular, I remember Lauren Bacall. Years later, when I was in college, I realized that I smoked cigarettes, I drank scotch, and I really liked to do this with my hair. And I realized the power of media. Now, media is a word that we use constantly, but back then, actually, it was really the time of Marshall McLuhan defining for us what media really is. The other thing that happened to me was that when I was in college, I realized that I had never seen a film made by a woman. Now, that's really odd to most of you because you've all grown up with a wealth of films in cinemas and on TV that were directed, created, written, produced by women, but I had never seen a film by a woman, or I thought I hadn't. I found out years later that there were only 2 women that were making films in Hollywood from 1930 until 1960. And one of them was a filmmaker named Ida Lupino, who made a film called The Trouble with Girls, which was about 2 little girls who were in a convent school and got into lots of trouble. And I loved that film. And I found out years later that it actually was made by a woman. It's really incredible to imagine that. Imagine what it was like for me the first time that I saw a film by a woman. And it was a documentary called Shopping Bag Ladies, and it was about homeless women, which up until that point were called shopping bag ladies because they carried their shopping bags. And even though I was a feminist, I had never seen the issue of homeless women from a feminist perspective. And it just was one of those epiphany moments in someone's lives where they realize that the whole world has shifted and their whole perspective has shifted. And I realized the power of the media, and it came to me through feminism. A couple of months later, I was able to go to a women's weekend. By the way, it was spelled W-O-M-Y-N. Women didn't want men in their name. I really cringe at that. But there was a group of women called Women Make Movies that were showing a film in a barn. And they were showing this film to all women in the audience. And again, I had this other experience of not only what was it like to see a film by a woman, but what was it like to see a film by a woman in a group of women where we were really able to talk and share our experiences. And that, again, changed my life. So I left school and I came to New York City. There were only a couple of organizations working on women in film, and one of them was Women Make Movies. I rode my bicycle for three months in front of the office, being terrified to walk in the door and knock on the door and say, "I just want to be an intern here," but I did, and I got the internship. I then was lucky enough to get a job with the organization. But through various different reasons, I ended up leaving. I wanted to make films, and in fact, one of the reasons I left is because my first job was to make a documentary about battered women. My second job was to go out into the community and show that film. And I thought, no, I want to be a filmmaker. That's what I really want to do. I don't want to do distribution. So I left, and I actually went to go work in a foundation to learn how to raise money to make films. But while I was at the foundation, I got a phone call from somebody, and they said, Women Make Movies is in really, really bad shape. It's about to fall apart. And would you come to a meeting? So I did. And that, again, was a moment of big change, because what ended up happening was that when Reagan came into power in the 1980s, Women Make Movies, like a lot of other women's art organizations, lost its funding. That funding caused a very big internal strife, and the organization was really about to close its doors. But I went to this meeting because it had been so important to me, and myself and another woman decided that we would try to see if there was some way that we could keep the organization going. And even though the organization was really founded around the idea of putting cameras into hands of women who didn't have the skills to make films, we had also started distributing films because nobody wanted those films after the films got made. And the only thing that actually was still going on in the organization, even though we had no staff, and even though there was really just an empty shell of an office, was that people kept on asking us for those films. They wanted to see those films. So myself and this woman named Lydia Dean Pilcher, who actually has gone on to be Michael Moore's producer, as well as Mira Nair's producer, and done a whole lot of things. She was a grad student at the time. We came into the office twice a week at night and figured out that all we needed was $50 a week to keep things going so that we could actually keep the organization afloat. And this started actually the social entrepreneurship of Women Make Movies and the social enterprise. Because what we did was we took a film that we had gotten for $400. It was a film called Being a Prisoner. I was still working at the foundation during the day. I went to the foundation program officer in prison reform, asked him for a mailing list. By the way, this is before the days of the internet, before the days of fax machines even. So it was all done with snail mail and Xeroxing. And I used the Clark Foundation. I'm going to acknowledge them publicly. The Edna McConnell Clark Foundation actually supported our early efforts. Unbeknownst to them, I used the Xerox machine to Xerox 5,000 flyers and their postage meter to send them out to 5,000 groups around the country that were working on prison reform. And I realized that this was an amazing win-win-win situation. The win for us as an organization was that we raised money. We sold 2 prints of the film in 16 millimeter for $500 each and rented the film 6 times. The win was for the organizations that were dealing with prison reform that really needed to see a film about women's issues in prison. And the third win was for the filmmaker who got royalties from the sale of those films and could use that money to go on and make future films. And once again, this changed my life. This really changed my life, because I gave up my idea of wanting to make films. It seemed very small to me, next to the idea of being able to really impact with those films on people's lives. So from that year, from 1983, with a budget of $30,000, $15,000 of which was my salary, I remember we had a $46 line item for Xeroxing for that year. I don't know how we did it. We are now a $2 million organization with 13 staff people distributing films by women filmmakers from every continent except Antarctica. We have more than 500 films in the collection, from films by women from Iran, from Indiana, from Ireland, and from Iceland, as well as films from women all over South America, Asia, and Africa. We were the first organization to release a film about female genital mutilation. Very unknown subject. In fact, it was pretty amazing to hear Alice Walker say those words on the Today Show for the first time. And I remember seeing the marketing the press release from our marketing person, and she said that 1 million women in the world were affected by female genital mutilation. And I said, no, that must be a mistake. And it was 10 million. I thought that 1 million was way too much. We distribute films by Indian women from South Asia about issues facing Indian women like seed reform and bride burning, and the work of SIWA, the Self-Employed Women's Association. We distribute films from South America by South American filmmakers about the issues facing their lives, including work that they're doing in the Amazon. Here in the United States, we work with filmmakers very often early in their career. Filmmakers like Lisa Jolodenko, who went on to make The Boys Are All Right, and also Kimberly Pierce, who went on to make Boys Don't Cry. So we're working kind of as an incubator with women filmmakers, trying to help them make sure that they get the visions to the screen. And we do that through a production assistance program, which helps women, thank you, while they're in production. We have almost 200 women filmmakers in that program at any given time. We've helped to produce more than 500 films, and each year we help women raise $3 million to get their films made. Those films go on to win prizes at the Sundance Film Festival or be nominated for Academy Awards. In fact, 5 out of the last 6 years, we're very honored that our films have been nominated for Academy Awards. They include films like The Oath by Laura Poitras, which is a very different look at Guantanamo than the one that we see in the mainstream media, or Freeheld by Cynthia Wade, which looked at gay domestic partnership issues and won an Academy Award, as well as The Greatest Silence, the film that I was talking about yesterday, which was the first film to look at the problem of rape of women in the Congo. So the moral of the story, I guess, is that it is possible to create to not found a social entrepreneur organization or a social enterprise, but to go to an organization and create a program that is self-sustaining. That's the mantra for us. We do no program development unless that program is sustainable, meaning that we do not want to be dependent on government, on foundation, or on corporate funding sources or income. We earn 90% of our income through selling and renting films, and through the production assistance program, we take a percentage of the grants which we help filmmakers raise. We believe really strongly in that, and I hear a lot of things from people talking about social enterprises and talking a lot about grants from foundations, and I think that's really great. But I do want to caution you that grant makers are very fickle. Grants come and go. It's really important to create some sort of structure, some sort of enterprise that can actually continue itself no matter what happens outside. And I just want to end with one story, because somebody asked me yesterday on the panel about whether or not media really can create social change. And I want to respond to that question again and just tell you a story. After 9/11, Women Make Movies is an organization that is based in New York. We were, of course, very affected by what was going on around us, and we were really concerned because of the violence against Arabs, and particularly the violence against Arab women following the attacks on the World Trade Center. We had the largest collection at the time of films made by and about Muslim and Arab women, so we decided to make those films available for free through a viral campaign. And for 3 months, we offered the films for free to any group that wanted to use it for educational or discussion purposes, to really talk about what Islam is really about and what Arab lives are really about. At the same time, I, as usual, spoke to my father once a week on the phone on Sundays and started getting into a very big conversation with him about politics. This was just around the time when the decision had been made to bomb Afghanistan. And we got into a huge fight, such a big fight that I hung up on him, which I don't usually do, or he hung up on me. I think it was actually the other way around. And I was shocked. I was really shocked. Here was my father, who I didn't think was from that kind of political perspective, but he had gotten so much from the media about how important it was for us to respond, and to respond not in the way that we were responding at Women Make Movies, but in a different way. So the next week I called him, because even though we had this big fight and he hung up on me, I still wanted to call him. And he said to me, you know what? I changed my mind. And I said, why? I know nothing I said affected you. And he said, no. I turned on CNN and I saw this movie about women in Afghanistan. And I realized that Afghanistan is a country made up of women and children, and that bombing Afghanistan is probably not what we should do. That moved me tremendously. It moved me that my own father could be moved to change his mind about something because of a film that he saw. And I realized that my passions about feminism and media had been good to me. Thank you.